Welcome to the Second Line Show. I'm Nola Nash. Let's let the good times roll. Welcome to the Second Line Show. I am your host, Nola Nash. Thank you for joining us today. Whether you were joining us on the Right Review, whether you're joining us on Nola's Second Line, my page, or live on YouTube, or any of the pages that these awesome ladies in front of me have shared our show on. So welcome to the show. Please post your questions, post your comments. If you have not given StreamYard permission to access your Facebook, then I'm not going to be able to see who you are. So that's perfectly fine. You don't have to give StreamYard that permission. But if you do that, please put your name in the comments so that we know who's here, who's joining us today. We are going to have some fun things for you guys to get involved in here in just a little bit. So before we get going on the first audience participation that we're going to do, I would like to introduce our authors to you. Savannah Hendriks is joining us soon. We are struggling a little bit with some internet connection problems with her, but I'm keeping an eye out for her joining us in the waiting room. And as soon as we can, I'm going to get her right in here. So I am going to, since she is right here next to me, I'm going to let Tammy Grace start us off, and we'll kind of go around the circle there and let these ladies tell you a little bit about who they are, what they write, and anything else they care to share. How do you take your coffee? I mean, whatever you want to do. If the floor is yours, Tammy.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tammy L. Grace. I use the L on all my books, and I write primarily women's fiction. I also write a private detective whodunit murder mystery series and several sweet Christmas, think like Hallmark style novellas for the holidays. And I also write using a pen name of Casey Wilson, and I use that to write for a London-based publisher called Bookatour. And I've written two dog-centric books that are about our connection with dogs for them. And speaking of dogs, all of my books have canine companions in them, and most all of them have dogs on the cover. So you might recognize some of those. So a big thanks to Nola for inviting me, and I'm excited to chat with all these fun ladies. And the coffee question, I don't drink coffee, but I love the smell of coffee. But I drink a ton of tea, like way too much tea.
All right. I love tea, but I'm a coffee person. Answer whatever question you want. Deborah, if you don't want to answer a coffee question, you can answer whatever question you want. You can give us, some random fact. I don't care. This is the kind of show this is, ladies and gentlemen. We just freewheeling here. This is what we do. All right. So Deborah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss Deborah L. King. We got two ladies with the L in the middle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deborah King. I write women's fiction. My debut novel is Glory Bishop. It's a story of a young lady who has to choose between the true love of her life and a kind of rich older man. I live in the Chicago area, and I love coffee with extra cream, but I have this really cool cup, and it holds an entire bottle of wine.
Even more, my girl. Cheers to that. Ladies, if you've got a glass of wine, hold it up.
Cheers.
We are winding it down this Wednesday. Savannah, are you able to hear us, honey?
I am now.
Yay! We got it working. All right, so you hold tight just a second there, Savannah. We're going to let Miss Patricia Sands tell us a little bit about her, and then we'll get down to that bottom row of ladies.
Okay, well, hi, everybody, and I'm really thrilled to be here, too. Thanks so much, Nola, for the invitation. As I said before we came live, I sort of feel like I'm sitting in a psychiatric hospital room because everything is kind of sterile. But my husband and I just moved 2 hours north of Toronto. We've been in Toronto forever. And thanks to COVID, we moved 2 hours north. And so we're just in a rental apartment at the moment with none of our stuff, but it's coming. So it was a good move, and it's been great for writing. I write women's fiction. I started as an indie author, then was signed by Amazon's Lake Union imprint. 7 of my novels are set in the south of France because my husband and I, we're geezers, and we have kind of time to do a bit of traveling. So for the last 20 years, we've spent a lot of time in the south of France, and I discovered that people like to read stories that are set in the south of France, and I sure like to write them. So that's been a lot of fun. I also do a women's tour once a year connected with my novels, but I can talk about that some other time. And my first novel was called The Bridge Club. It was about 8 women who've been friends since they were in their 20s, and they're now in their 70s. And it follows through all the various milestones and ups and downs that they faced in all the years they've been friends and playing bridge. And I'm just about to publish a 10th anniversary edition of that book. So I'm really excited about it.
Oh, wow.
And I love the smell of coffee too. And but I don't really like the taste of it, but I drink it all the time if it has chocolate in it.
Oh,
My
there we go.
coffee. Yeah.
Faux coffee. That's awesome. I love it. We've got some great comments coming in, and guys, I'm going to keep posting some more of these kind of as we go along as well. But I want to introduce you, those of you who have also posted in the comments that Miss Savannah Hendriks is also new to you. We've got lots of folks who are meeting some new authors tonight. You guys are going to love these ladies. So, Savannah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yes, sorry it took me so long to get in here. I'm on my phone, so I'm holding this now instead of my computer. So I write basically everything. I started off in children's literature, and I have 3 picture books, and then I wrote a romance novel, and my most recent release is women's fiction. So I'm kind of all over the place.
How do you take your coffee?
Black.
Oh,
I don't like anything in it.
Man, that's tough. I've drunk coffee my entire life. And when I say my entire life, if you watched the show last week, you know I was drinking coffee when I was itty bitty with my grandparents. I had not worked my way up to black coffee yet. That is strong stuff. I don't know how anybody
You have
does.
to get the right kind. You have to buy really good coffee, or else I don't think you can do it without great coffie.
It's like hotel coffee. Like that's not something you drink black. That's something.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this? Yeah. They always give you the one little packet of creamer and like the one little packet of sugar. I'm allergic to artificial sweeteners, so I have to have the little sugar. It's never enough. It's like, this is crappy coffee. And I'd get dressed really fast to get down to the hotel lobby where there's more of the crappy coffee, but also more sugar and creamer. So there's always that. Lynne, I'm going to let you, before I derail this whole thing on my own, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Nola, for the invitation. I really appreciate it, and it's so much fun to meet these wonderful, wonderful authors. I'm really hesitant to say I write women's fiction because I don't even get what that means. It's like men aren't supposed to read it. I don't. Sure. I'm really not sure what. As I said, I'm not sure what that means. I just my 10th novel, I think, came out. I think, and when I say I think, I don't mean I think it came out. I mean I think it's my 10th. It's my 13th book. Just a month ago, and the title is the Book of Carol Sue, and these are stories that there's a lot of drama, but my last 2 books have a lot of humor in them too, which is kind of new for me. Mm-hmm. But they're steeped in both loss and humor, which is something that I was experimenting with. So let's see, I do drink black coffee, and I have a crazy lab. We're dog people, and we have now a yellow lab, and I'm always posting something about his latest escapade, which usually involves chasing him down a trail in the woods, screaming, "Don't roll in it! Don't leave it! Leave it! Leave it!"
That sounds like taking Dudley outside. Don't eat that. What is that? Don't eat that. Always wanted to eat stuff. And he's a puppy, but yeah, but like he'll rub his face on the grass. I'm like, I don't know what's there, but don't do that. Not on that in my house. All right, Carol, you are up to tell us about who you are. You bring us on home, girl.
Hi, my name is Carol Koris. I also have an L in the middle, but I don't use it. And thank you, Nola, for having me today. And I have to tell you, I had the best time today with our off chats. It was really, because somebody said they were a little nervous, and once that started, it was just so much fun. So I'm actually still on my first novel, so I guess it should be my debut novel, even though it came out a while ago. I was working a full-time job and really had very little time to try to get it out there. And I understand a little bit the confusion about women's fiction, because I think anybody could read my book. My husband read my book. But it is about a woman. It's about a wife and a mother, and it's about loss. And I think it's about the strength of the female spirit, and how, not that men don't go through things, but this particular book dealt with a woman, and how I feel that we're so incredibly resilient. And not always to do with the wine.
Although it helps.
Oh, it does help, yes. So I'm going back and forth in my head what book 2 will look like, what it'll be, and I get caught up, and then this situation really zapped my creativity. But I'm really happy to be here with my one book. It's called Shadow and Light, and I do drink coffee, but a couple of years ago I just started drinking tea. And I drink oolong, and I drink green tea, and I'll just end my portion with, I'm very pleased with Deborah's cup that holds a whole bottle of wine. But I've actually got the wine glass that holds the whole bottle of wine, which I got out today because somebody brought it up. It doesn't sit on my shelf. I don't use it, but it's such a cool thing. So not every.
I love that. And I'm just glad, I made the joke last show that I don't know what stupid thing I said. I say stupid things all the time. That's sort of what I do on this show. Everybody else says intelligent things, and I'm the goofball. But I said something dumb, and I said, I promise there's no wine in my cup. And last week, there was no wine in my cup. I stand by that. However, this week, it's a whole other story. We had quite the conversation. I've refilled. Again, I have the refill cup that's sitting here keeping my Moscato cold. And since we've had the conversation about our wine and the fact that we wanted to drink our way through this show, we've decided also in our hilarious chat today, and I got to tell you, ladies, that was so much fun. What's in a name here? We were calling this our author chat. That's sort of what I say. And then we started getting kind of fun with it and silly with it. And so our folks in the comments in the chat, this is actually where you come in. We were indecisive about our name, although we have one in particular we kind of sort of like. But we decided when the wine came up, we'd call it the Women's Lit Wine Chat. Well, that was a little sedate for this group of women as things got going. And then perhaps the Women of Women's Lit Get Lit is the name of the chat today. Or perhaps as we get, deeper into the bottle of wine, or shallower in our cups that hold a whole bottle of wine, the buzzed authors buzzing about buzzworthy books. So we're going to let you guys in the chat cast your votes and let us know what you think today's chat should be called. Here's your choices. If you come up with anything else, feel free to throw those in there too. So here we are in our our inebriated discussion. We're not inebriated yet. Who knows by the end of the show? Really.
And this afternoon, there was no wine involved, at least on my end. I was just having fun. So I don't need much to do that. I
know. That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh my God, if we were having this much fun, this silly. with absolutely no alcohol involved, what will happen by the end of this show? You never know. Who knows what's going to happen? No one knows. Like Patricia said in her post, I loved it. She's like, you know, Nola. Well, maybe you don't. Nobody really knows what Nola's going to do. And I was like, that was spot on. Absolutely spot on. You know why? I don't know what Nola's going to do on any given night of this show. So, you know, tonight ought to be extra special fun. So, ladies, before we get too crazy and the one does take over, I know, Lynne, you said something, and we kind of were building on this about what is women's lit. What does that actually mean? And, you know, does it mean that men can't read it? What do you think are some of the special qualities about women's lit that make it something that sticks with so many people, that keep people coming back? How do those stories find their reader, or how does the reader kind of embrace that story? We all have stories in our lives that maybe are the hurt, maybe are the triumph, maybe are, you know, kind of those things that are the struggle that we've overcome, that are, you know, the family struggles that, you know, whether it's illness or death or all of those things that are kind of those common themes that we see in women's lit. But what makes those stories so special when we're reading about other people, when we're reading about those characters? Why do we relate to that so much?
I had a discussion about this with my editor because I was objecting to the classification women's fiction, and she said basically men read shoot 'em up, cut 'em up, that's the kind of stuff that is more considered men's spy stuff, and that women's fiction is more considered family drama,
Okay.
and relationship stories. And what I like to think of myself as writing is just literary fiction, which I think about crafted language and human stories, so in that sense, I understand the differentiation, because I don't write thrillers, I don't write paranormal, I don't write science fiction. I understand those genres are not women's fiction, but if you think about somebody like, say, William Styron, for example, or, you know, would you consider that women's fiction? I mean, it was certainly, he's writing about relationships, he's writing the deep human stories. Or say Wallace Stegner. Those are deep human stories about relationships. Is that women's fiction? So I'm conflicted about it.
I think that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to toss one to you guys.
I think that what I've noticed over the years is what used to be called, because you said it used to be called literary fiction.
Right.
And there was quite the differentiation between literary fiction, where you craft your words and you really care very much about the language and the characters. And I'm wondering if perhaps to meet the audience today, that sounded a little scary. Like, well, I don't think I want to read anything that hefty. Like, you know, is it going to be like Mrs. Dalloway? So I wonder if, because this is relatively new, women's fiction. And when I first started my book in the categories, there was a literary fiction category, but it seems to have disappeared. So now, just because I have a mystery in mind, it's not a mystery. I mean, she goes on a mystery, but it's not, you know. So I think that the genres have become kind of muddled, you know. And I think most of the readers that I think about would be a little nervous about literary fiction. You know, that might be, and they would still like it, but I think they might be afraid of it.
That, you mean just the term, afraid of the term?
Yes, just the term.
Yeah,
that's a hefty term. Yeah.
And I think you know, the introduction of chick lit into the, you know, literary world really was a complete move away from literary fiction, and perhaps then they had to bring in another category that kind of fit in the middle. So it's not chick lit and it's not literary. It's more, I look at a lot of women's fiction as storytelling.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know, and that we are really, and I have tremendous appreciation for literary fiction. I often wish that I could, you know, weave my words like so many of the wonderful authors in that category. But I know that I'm a storyteller, and I started writing just 10 years ago, and by accident. And a lot of my friends tell me that I write like I talk, and I feel comfortable knowing that. I know it's not going to appeal to everyone, but I hope that to the majority of women, they feel comfortable reading our stories because we're telling their stories.
Right.
Yeah,
I
think
like that. Go for it, Tammy.
I was just going to say, we've had this conversation with other authors before, you know, trying to figure out what it really is. And we came to the conclusion that it's usually involving a very relatable character, very character driven, as opposed to somebody mentioned, you know, what men like to read is very plot driven as opposed to character driven. So an emotional journey that a woman might go through. And I think you get very wrapped up in the character because they're very relatable. And if something hasn't happened to you, it may have happened to somebody you know. So it's very easy to relate to the woman in the story. And I think that's what we're all saying in a different way, but just that journey that a woman goes through. And like Patricia was saying, you know, it's not chick lit. I write characters, they're all in midlife. So none of them are super young. And I just find them very relatable. And that's usually what the reader is saying, you know, I just love your characters. So I think it's a very character-driven genre.
Now, Deborah, I want you to speak to this, and Savannah, I'm not leaving you out. You had an interesting transition to this genre. So I want to hang on to you for just a second, and then we're going to get to why that switch with you and what brought that change to the kind of from the different things that you write into this particular genre. So Deborah, tell me about, you know, how you feel about this as well. What speaks to you about this particular genre?
I've had men read my book and tell me it's a girl story.
A girl story.
My brother asked me to please blow something up next time. But I think women's literature, women's literary fiction in particular, all women have a story. Some of us have really great stories. Some of us have sad stories, but they're all relatable stories. And women's literary fiction brings women closer to each other. It takes you into worlds that you may not normally see. My book is set in the 80s on the south side of Chicago, and that's a fairly exclusive club. So for people who've never seen that area, weren't there for that era, it's an opening. And I don't like the title of women's fiction, and I'm making air quotes under the table, but because it is exclusionary. It is saying only women read this. But like I said, I've had men read my book too, and most of them like it. Well, except my brother, who wants me to blow something up.
There'll have to be a car fire in the sequel or something, just on the side of the road, just to appease him. Just, you know, as they're passing by, just, you know, oh God, that's a horrible car. It's going to explode. Just to make brother happy. So he'll read the next one. Now, Savannah, your story is a little different because you've got some great children's books. You've got other things that are different genres, and yet you've found your way to this particular genre as well, this category as well. What is it about that category that after writing those other things kind of drew you in to do this?
I think it was really just luck. I mostly read children's books, to be honest with you, just because that's where my focus was for so long. But the books that I loved the most in my late 20s was women's fiction. And so my women's fiction book, I Adopted My Mom at the Bus Station, was originally a middle grade novel. And I turned it into a woman's fiction because that's where the story took me when I decided to add the adult part into it. So it was all just coincidence that this story didn't work as middle grade. It worked as women's fiction because that's what it is, that the bravery, the heart, the discovery, the hurt, everything. And so it was just all a story for me, because I write so many different things. A story develops in whatever form it wants to. So if I sit down to write something and it decides it wants to be women's fiction, then it will. If it wants to be romance, then it will. I always let the story decide what category it goes into.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
I like that point too. I mean, you don't know it yet because they haven't come out, but I actually have 3 different series that are in 3 different genres. And I think being able to do that, being able to just sort of find what that story needs or doesn't need, and whether it's the audience that it needs, whether it's just the feel that it needs, whether it's the mood that it's going to take. Is this going to be a lighthearted story? Is this going to be something that's going to take us down kind of to that dark side of ourselves and kind of make us look at that a little bit differently? All of those things do kind of come through that writing process. And as you're kind of putting that book together, it's going to tell you what it wants to be. And I think it's wonderful when authors listen to that. It may not be the book you sat down to write. It may not be the mood you sat down to write, but it's the story that the characters want to tell. And so that's the way, those books are always, to me, the ones that are the most special, the ones that stick with you because they've told themselves, as opposed to someone trying to force it into a category that they felt like they needed to write. And I mean, I'm very grateful that I have a publisher who said, sure, write whatever you want, and let me do that, and didn't kind of say, yeah, but you're a paranormal horror writer. You can't write this book that's funny. I was like, why not? I'm funny. Aren't I funny? I don't know. I feel like sometimes. So, it was, that book needed to be funny, and those characters were funny. So it's an interesting thing, but part of it has to do too with how those characters relate to themselves, to each other, how they relate to the author, how the author feels about it, and then hence the reader feels about it. And I think your points about the readers experiencing these things and kind of feeling these things, being able to relate or know somebody who relates, like Tammy said, is definitely a kind of a key element to these. I mean, no one who reads my book is going to have a psychotic mother who's out to kill them with magic. It's not going to happen. They might have a psychotic mother, might have certain elements, but probably not going to relate a whole lot to this main character. Maybe in some ways. But this particular genre, I mean, for me as a reader, I feel like Deborah said, it's opening doors, it's other people's lives, it's other people's worlds that we're not necessarily ever going to find ourselves in, but yet we get to learn a bit more about the human experience through the experiences of the characters, because we're not necessarily going to know someone who's been through this particular experience, and yet it gives us that broader view of humanity. And I do kind of agree. I think it's kind of a shame that it is labeled as women's literary fiction. One, it's a heavy title, and people are going, I don't know about literary fiction. You got Wuthering Heights and, these like huge books, and you're going, I didn't want to read that in high school. I don't want to read literature now. But it's more the telling of the story, I think. And it's kind of the picture of the humanity and what that experience looks like through the lens of other characters and other people that really give it that literary component. And women is sort of, I don't know about that term, because I do feel like even though a lot of the main characters tend to be women, and it's kind of coming from that perspective of that character, the experiences aren't exclusive to women. And just like Deborah said, it's very exclusionary. by saying, it's women's literary fiction. I do think that men have experienced loss. Men have experienced, that heartbreak, those family dramas. And, I wish more of them would pick it up, because I feel like, they don't necessarily express it. They're not necessarily going to talk about those things, but it doesn't mean that they don't feel those things. And, maybe reading someone's story like that would actually give them a way to kind of process through those experiences kind of on their own internally, as opposed to feeling like they have to actually kind of talk that out. Women, we've got these, these people, we call, we text, we talk it out. That's what we're going to do ad nauseum till we've examined every possible angle, and we've made up angles that weren't there because we needed to see that angle. But, men don't do that. And I feel like there's a lot of, and Elgin, good word, Barbara, sorry, I've got my things are moving. Barbara said empathy is developed by reading about and learning about people that are not like you. And I think that's kind of the same thing. And I think men are, maybe it's society, I don't know what it is, that doesn't really allow men to kind of enjoy that particular genre, to find that empathy. And I wish that label would be taken off of it. But at the same time, women who want to read it know exactly what they're looking for and what they want to find in those stories. And so it's like, man, why can't we speak to the men? We should speak to the men, and then, blow something up. And then at the same time, women have a really good idea of what they're going to expect in that book. And if they're looking for that story that's going to speak to them and be relatable, then it's a comfortable place to go, that particular genre, to find that experience and to kind of find that middle ground between the chick lit and the really heavy stuff. And I think especially right now, it's an interesting time to read about others' experiences, especially when our own experiences right now are kind of limited. It's almost it's a heart vacation in a way, to let your heart go explore someone else's lives and their struggles when we can't really get out there and explore our own.
Yeah. And, I do hear from men who have read some of my books. And quite often it's because their wife said, here, you should read this. And I'm sure a lot of the rest of you have found the same thing too, that when it might be a woman who picks up our book initially, but it's not necessarily just the woman that's going to end up reading it.
Does that happen with you guys too?
Some of the most, really most appreciative reviews that I have seen on Amazon, and especially Amazon, have been written by men. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I work very hard in my depictions of men to get it right, and to craft really three-dimensional men, and
maybe that's something that the men don't realize is happening in women's fiction, that as much attention is being given to the men in their lives and the women's lives in those stories as, to make them as relatable as the women are. I mean, maybe what's actually missing here is simply more discussion about the genre. Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly it's a new and a vague area. And so, and perhaps mislabeled.
I was just going to say, I wish it were labeled differently.
Mm-hmm.
Fiction for everyone.
Fiction for everyone. I like it. That's what it should be. Speaking of naming, guys, make sure that you are letting us know what you believe that our chat should be called. We've yet to come to a consensus.
Yes, right.
Drink up, lades.
Yes. Here's two.
Deborah, where's our? Where are we, Deborah?
her big gulp.
Her big gulp of wine over there. I love it. It's my new favorite thing. I'm going to have to get me one of those, Deborah. So as you're writing these things, as you're putting these stories together, how do you keep it from being, or what do you focus on to keep it from being, just here's a story that anybody could have, as opposed to here's a story that's going to resonate with a lot of people, as opposed, the resonating story as opposed to the common life experience, which would not necessarily be as interesting if everybody's going to experience that. So there's a fine line to walk there between reaching and resonating with folks and just reiterating everybody's lives. Sorry, was that I'm an English teacher. Was that a hard question? that was an AP level question, ladies. I'm sorry.
I think I think there's a lot of universals in our books, because when people ask what my book is about and they want one thing, it's not about one thing. So it's about a woman who's reaching the point in her career where, she's a photographer, and what she wanted was to be in magazines, to be hung up in galleries, and she's still shooting weddings and bar mitzvahs, and and she's a mom and she cares about her daughter. She can't have any more kids. So right there, you've got all these things. People haven't quite met their goal. People are getting older and they start to see their time clicking. And then she has a loss. Well, who amongst us have not had a loss? I mean, it doesn't always have to be as huge as a child, but like you're a dog person. I'm sure when anything happens to your animal, like loss is universal. And compassion is universal. And there are two men in my book that my main character would not exist without them. So it's not just women. She has a husband who is very different than she is. And she has a coworker she never even paid attention to because her life was too busy. So now she suddenly gets to see this person, and I was talking on one of the chats on Facebook that even this has happened with COVID. Like I am so in this house now and on Facebook that I would not have met some of the people I have. Because, you go to work, you do your job, you talk to the same people, and you come home and you're so tired. No, I don't want to go watch Nolan Nash because it's not 8:00 and I'm too tired, So I believe it's universals, and maybe that, I also, studied writing. But I would bet that if you look at any of our books, they're there, and even if the writer can't put their finger on it, it resonates, because if it didn't resonate, nobody else would read it.
That's exactly right.
It's very true. And I think two of the themes that I really focus on in all my books, one is friendship, relationships that women have with each other and also with men, but particularly women's friendships and how powerful they can be and how important they are in every aspect of our life. And the other thing is, I tend to write to my demographic, to older, mature women and men. And that it's never too late to start over again. There are always second chances or third chances out there, that whatever's going on in your life, you should never be afraid to keep moving forward. And, for people who are just newly retired, for example, and I like to use the term rewired instead of retired.
I love that. Great term.
And now you have the time to think about things that maybe you wanted to do all your life and you couldn't do them before. COVID throws another, wrench into the works, but hopefully we get back to some sort of normal, and that people should never be afraid to pursue dreams, and just to know that it's just never too late.
I like that aspect of it too. And I think as a reader, maybe we're looking for things that are relatable, but also things that are those aspirations, those things that we are looking forward to, that moving forward, and knowing, what's coming up in my life for me. I'm not in that retirement age. I wish I was. I'd have more time to write, but it's truth here.
Don't take your life away.
No, that's true. That's very true. Another theme in another book. Don't wish your life away. But in looking at those stories of those women who've lived and learned, and there's a lot of wisdom in those characters as well. That even if you are not at that stage in your life, as a reader, there is something to take from that and carry forward with you, right. As that life lesson. Like you said, don't wish your life away, and just something as simple as that. For someone who's kind of in between that. My kids are growing up, and it won't be long before, I'm just kind of out there without them. And, that is sage advice. And so maybe that's why we're picking up these books too. It's not just what we relate to but what we need to hear as well. Those, it isn't too late to start over, and there is something else out there for you. Go chase those dreams. Go do those things. Don't dare to dream those things. Don't write yourself off. Those are all such common themes, and maybe we need those stories to give us the courage to do those things. We kind of see our own courage in those characters, and as a reader, sometimes that's what we need. That's what we need. Now, Savannah, your stories, you've got some great children's stories too. And this is not just something, seeing these shared experiences is not just something that we see in books written for adults. Kids are kind of looking at the same stories for the same reasons. It's that relatability. It's that, finding their courage in other characters. How does that look for you as you're deciding what you want to write for kids too?
For me, it's always been focused on hope. I just feel that there's not much of it, especially right now. And just on a day-to-day basis, I think there's so many things that are going on, even before everything that's happening now. There's just been, I guess I see it from my past life, I guess you could say. I was a nanny for about 7-8 years. And so I really got to spend a lot of time with children, and I was really finding a common theme. And that was these families, these parents, these caregivers, there's not a lot of hope. And this was back, in early 2000s when everything was great and wonderful. So that's something that is in all of my stories, because I feel that is the most important thing to offer children, readers. It doesn't matter how old you are. I don't know anybody that doesn't say, oh, well, I'm 70 years old now, I don't need to worry about that. You still need it. You need it every day. You need it as a child, and you need it as a teenager, an adult. As you get older, you need it. It's just, that's the main focus, because it's so important, because if you don't have that, then it seems like everything else kind of spirals out of control.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that's, who's related to Riley Joseph? Or is this just Riley's got the greatest sister in the world?
That's my brother.
Let's ask Riley, does she blow things up?
Yeah, so Riley, now, Deborah
This is
said
not
that
the
you didn't
brother.
like her.
This is not the brother that wants me.
So this brother likes the book. All right, so
this
Riley,
is a nice one.
We're good with you then. Other brother, we gotta have a talk with. Thanks for joining us, Riley. Riley says he's gotta go now, but glad he was here for a while. All right, figured we better address that comment pretty quickly. Now, and that was a good segue to you. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is knowing that your niche is south side of Chicago, and that is an interesting and just that dynamic and that environment. There is going to be, not something that a lot of readers have experienced. And like you said, that's sort of it's an experience, a way for them to experience something they weren't going to. You fully acknowledge that this is not a common experience for your readers. What is some of the feedback that you've gotten about this, from people who wouldn't have experienced that before? Was it eye-opening for them? Was it maybe a little scary for them as they were reading something that they truly couldn't relate to, but found themselves kind of immersed in that world that you created?
I've had people, a lot of people who've read the book are from Chicago, so they recognize a lot of the places. Then I've had people who've read it who somebody said it was a different world for them. They grew up during the same era in the same general Chicago area, but had no clue what life was like on the South Side. My book doesn't have violence or gangs or anything like that in it. It's just no explosions. It's just the life of one person. But I've had people tell me that it was eye-opening for them. I've had people love the pop culture references. I've had people
I mean, the 80s are great, right? I mean, so many of you, if they can't relate to the South Side of Chicago, we can relate to the pop culture references. That's at least going to pull in people and give them
Definitely.
something to hang on to kind of get them immersed in that particular setting.
Definitely. And then I've had people ask me really weird questions. I had
All right, you got to find one of those.
I had one editor, beta reader, asking me. She didn't believe Black people ate pot roast.
Oh.
I had them coming home on a Sunday and having pot roast, and she thought it should be something much more exotic.
Exotic? What did she think they ate?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, but pot roast is great. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, it was eye-opening for her.
That's almost scary, let alone eye-opening.
Yeah,
right. You know, do we really misunderstand each other's culture so much that we don't even understand what we have on a Sunday dinner? I mean, if pot roast is a point of editorial contention, then it
really was. I even had the recipe in the book. How to make a pot roast in a crock pot, and she expected something more exotic.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that is probably one of the most interesting editorial feedback comments I've heard in a long time.
Right.
But,
Deborah, I'm reading the book right now that's set in Chicago, in Petite Africa. Is that the South Side?
I've never heard of that. It sounds like it might be somewhere on the West Side.
Okay.
Or what year?
Well, it's in the 80s.
Huh.
I'll email you.
Never heard of it. Please.
About it. Yeah, because
that's interesting.
But it's really been fascinating.
Are we talking Woodlawn or Hyde Park? I used to live in Hyde Park.
I don't know. I'm not that far into it, but I just know that was the area that was mentioned.
Deborah, where is it set? Where's your
Mine is set in South Shore and Inglewood.
Oh, okay.
Inglewood. Now, Inglewood, I know. I've heard of Inglewood.
Yeah.
I've not heard of South Shore, but that's a really interesting thought to know that a city as known as Chicago has areas and pockets that people still don't know, even the local.
Chicago is a huge city. There's one street called Western, and you can drive on Western for an hour and not get out of Chicago.
Well, like Stony, right?
Yeah.
Like you could ride Stony Point forever.
That's wild. I mean, Nashville is not a big city. Where I live in New Orleans doesn't compare to Chicago. I can't even imagine living in a town that size. We have probably 24 streets in the Nashville area named Old Hickory. If you want to go anywhere, you gotta be real specific with your directions, because like Old Hickories are everywhere. They stop, they start, they end. One of them ends in a lake. And literally ends in a lake. You don't want to be on that. My brother and sister-in-law ended up on Old Hickory, and they newly moved here and ended up on the wrong Old Hickory late at night and almost ended up in the lake. This is how we know that Old Hickory ends in a lake. they found that out. But it's, we couldn't get on a road and drive for an hour in Nashville and unless we're in the interstate, we're going from one end to the other. But I mean, that's still, hitting suburbs and stuff. That's amazing to me to even think about a city that size, and then how much the culture must vary pocket to pocket to pocket.
Yes.
I mean, how suburbs can vary so much, but within a city, that it's almost their own, I don't want to say ecosystem, but kind of a cultural connection in each kind of borough and city, kind of like New York does when you go from Brooklyn to Queens. All of these places are very different. It's interesting to kind of think about how that dynamic would work in a novel, knowing that it's kind of its own little microcosm of culture and customs and all of those things that even within a well-known city can be vastly different from place to place. I just can't even fathom living in a city that size to learn those things.
Yeah, I know. I can see but I've never heard What, Petite Africa? I've never.
Never heard of it.
Mm-mm.
Now we all have to go and research that, Patricia, because now we're all curious. Hey guys in the chat, if any of you guys actually know what Petite Africa is, or if you're watching this later and you know what Petite Africa is, what part of town that is, please let us know. You'll save us a research step, because I know we are all going to go look this up. We got to find this out. Oh, that is awesome. You guys, this was a really interesting conversation for me, because I don't know much about this genre, it being new and not what I necessarily write. It's interesting for me because I'm one of those people out there, those readers out there who are going, what is this genre? What does it really consist of? How do the authors decide that's what they're writing? Or how do editors decide that's what that author wrote? And this has been a very enlightening conversation for me, and I hope we've clarified some things for perhaps some readers who are new to the genre, and open the eyes of some of our guys out there that have been listening to us. Now, before we get to our Louisiana Lagniappe, we know that you guys know that I do the New Orleans history and mystery. So I have a story for you tonight. So New Orleans history and mystery for me, this is the storytelling part. And I chose a story that has a great kind of a family element to it, but then also gets, well, New Orleans, right? I mean, you've seen the show. All right, so the story we have for you today is The Sausage Maker's Wife. Feel free to cringe as soon as you know where this is going. I mean, start cringing now, actually. So back in the 1800s, there was a house that's still there, actually, 725 Ursuline Street. And in the 1800s, it was owned by a young German couple, Mr. and Mrs. Hans Mueller. And Mr. Mueller was a sausage maker. And things were pretty good with him and his young wife, but they worked very, very, very hard. And, eventually doing a lot of hard work takes its toll on the wife. She's, according to Hans, aging a bit faster than she should, not as lovely as she once was. Hans decides he's a little tired of her. He takes a mistress, enjoying the heck out of the mistress. Decides, if he's really going to make the most of things with the mistress, the wife has got to go. And so, finally having enough one night of her nagging and her kind of haggard appearance that she's developed now, while she's sweeping up the floor, closing up the shop, he comes up behind her and strangles her to death. Now, if you know anything about New Orleans, it's not an easy place to hide a body. So he's got this body in this place with very close streets, and your neighbors are literally attached to you. I mean, it's basically row houses along the way here. Can't exactly go carrying her body out. But he's a sausage maker. Butcher, if you will. So basically, he gets her into small enough pieces to put her in the meat grinder. And all of a sudden, Mr. Mueller comes up with an excellent way to both get rid of a body and make a few bucks in the process. So the wife has gone missing. Mr. Mueller is becoming a little unpredictable and, trying really hard to kind of keep up a show. The neighbors start realizing she's not around. Where's your wife? Oh, she's gone to visit family. She's ill. She's out of town. The excuses pile on, but he starts getting worse and worse and worse for wear. Guilty conscience, perhaps, but we find out there's a bit more to that a bit later. So Hans starts to slowly start going mad with all of this that's going on. And, the sausage, well, it's selling. Let's just say that. Seems to be pretty popular, actually. It's got a new secret ingredient in it, and people are enjoying it until a local woman bites down on a piece of her sausage and something hard is in it. She spits a bite out and finds a bit of a finger with a bit of a gold ring. And so she goes shrieking to the police, who then go to the butcher shop, burst open the door, And they find Hans cowered in the back corner of his butcher shop, shaking his hands and hiding and cowering and shaking and pointing at the sausage grinder, the meat grinder. And the story goes that his wife had been haunting him coming up out of that sausage grinder every night since the night that he killed her, and was haunting him so bad it was driving him insane. Well, Hans confessed to killing his wife. And then they, instead of putting him in jail, they institutionalized him in the local insane asylum, where Hans went genuinely crazy and killed himself. Now, the butcher shop changed hands several times, became a private residence, and residents say that they still see the mutilated body of the wife that wanders the house today. So that is our story of the sausage maker's wife and her subsequent ghost.
Wow.
And what happens to men who perhaps think less with their brain and more with, I would say, their sausage, but this is probably a family show. I've had some more.
Is that a literary interpretation, Nola?
In this case, we're going to say literal interpretation.
Well, you know,
so, yes.
The play Sweeney Todd. That was a great musical. Sounds a lot like Mr. Mueller.
It's very similar to Mr. Mueller.
There was a movie in the 80s called Motel Hell, where they would kidnap the hotel guests and fatten them up and make them into sausage.
Mm.
See,
apparently meat grinders are a universal theme. We need to come up with a genre for this. What are we going to call it? Carnivore fiction. Not for vegetarians.
Not women's fiction. We could just call it not women's fiction.
Not women's fiction. Well, going from gross things to lovely things, let's shift gears slightly. Actually, let's shift gears significantly and talk about some favorite fall traditions. I don't know about how the weather is with you guys, but this has been a beautiful week of cooler weather. And it has really, I know we had our first day of fall this week officially. Here in Nashville, it's finally starting to feel like it. I know some places folks are getting even chillier than that. What are some things that you guys like to do kind of as fall is in the air, you start thinking about those traditions, those things that just kind of say fall to you when you do them? Family traditions, places you go, things you cook, meals, like food that kind of comes to mind, anything.
Well, I have to recuse myself from this because I refuse to acknowledge autumn until October. It's true. I don't.
That works.
When people start saying it's a header on one of my Facebook pages. September does not mean summer is over. So I celebrate summer until October, even though the solstice has changed. And
I love it.
So I'll just recuse myself from that.
Okay, I'm with you, and I take it a step further because anything that means I have to start even thinking about holidays is like, no. So I like, the whole, like I got that first Swiss colony catalog.
Yes.
I took it on gloves, like those plastic, those
You gave it the COVID treatment?
like this, dropped it in recycle.
No holidays. I'm a spring person, really, more than fall. But I will tell you that I've decorated for Halloween already. I think it's more I just love Halloween. Come on. I just told you a story about a woman in a meat grinder. You think I don't love Halloween and everything it's worth? Come on now. I've got my witch hat sitting right over here for Halloween. I just finished making it. So I've got lights in here. It's everything. But for me, it's Halloween. Halloween was always our big holiday anyway, kind of as a family. even more so. I mean, Christmas, yeah, but Halloween's kind of always been that fun one where we got together and, you know, my brother and sister-in-law and their 2 little boys would come down with my kids, and we'd do the big, you know, decorate the whole house at my mom's. We'd do a big pot of crab and corn bisque. And so whenever anybody got back from trick-or-treating, they got to have the crab and corn bisque. And, you know, we would take them all to the pumpkin patches and stuff with, you know, the little kids. It was always fun to do that. But for me, I like Halloween. I think it's just fun. I mean, it's why I write what I write. But I as soon as I feel that nip in the air here, I'm like, ooh, get out the Halloween stuff. But then it's like, I feel really sad when it's time to take it down, because then I'm like you, Lynn. It's like, I'm not ready for Christmas. I don't even want to think about Christmas yet. And then I feel sad when I wait too long to put up my Christmas decorations, because I feel like I didn't have enough time with Christmas decorations. So I'm very conflicted when it comes to the holidays, extremely conflicted. However, I will, you know, I'll sit down happily at a Thanksgiving dinner. But I think for me, and Halloween has always been full of funny stories. I mean, my son went away. He was a hockey player. He was gone one year for Halloween. We made a cardboard cutout of him, and we called it Cardboard Cam, because his name is Cam. And we dressed it in his clothes and put a dowel rod on the back so we could hold on to him. And we took him trick-or-treating with the kids, because he always took kids. You know, he took the little ones. He's 8 years older than my youngest, and she's older than the nephews. So Camden was always the one that took the kids trick-or-treating. He went there that year. So we took Cardboard Cam. We cut a picture of his face and stuck it on the head, and he's just walking around. We had Cardboard Cam sitting on the porch when we got back from trick-or-treating. He sat there with a bucket of candy in his lap. It was better than any scarecrow, because, you know, looking up, I mean, you're walking up, it's a face there, you know. This is not, you know, kids scare the kids to death. It was so funny. We got a picture of my nephew when he was a little bitty baby in his little costume sitting in Cardboard Cam's lap. I mean, we milked Cardboard Cam. So anytime, and then when Cam went away to college, we took Cardboard Cam again. I mean, he lives in my mom's attic. He's just there all the time. Don't ever go in my mom's attic to get something out if you don't know that Cam is in there. It's like having some weird relative, like Wuthering Heights, you know, like up there, Jane Eyre, you know, talk about literature. We got our own crazy relative living in the attic. But I think that's those kinds of memories that always made Halloween so much fun for me, because we had those goofy things like that. We don't have a Cardboard Cam for Christmas. He's home for Christmas. But to me, it's also like football food. Like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, I'm embracing the cold weather as for holiday stuff. Sometimes it's just you change the way that you cook. So, I mean, are there any things, you know, things like that speak to you?
And that's where I excuse myself, because I'm in South Florida and the word chill does not exist.
No, it doesn't. No. It doesn't. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana. There's no chill.
Oh, it's so hot. Yeah. So, you know, change the way you cook, you know, want to make chili? Nah. You know, it's so, but I do love Halloween as well. So, you know,
it's a lot of fun.
That.
I love fall. So I love fall. I love the chill in the air. I love raking leaves. I love making chili and all of that stuff. It's my favorite season, but I like the holidays, so I'm always excited for them. And this year I'm probably more excited than other years.
My husband married the wrong. He should have married you. He's one of those. I married a man who seriously, like, his ideal would be to get a chainsaw, cut a big hole in the circular hole in the roof to get a big enough tree.
Big tree.
So you've married Clark Griswold.
Yeah.
Okay. Clarifying.
Yeah. And you know what? Every year we have to watch National Lampoon Christmas Vacation. Every year, every Thanksgiving night, for the past 100 years, we have watched Planes,
Trains, and Automobiles. Exactly.
Well,
that's.
And he starts laughing at the scene. You know, the F scene. You know.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Well, we start
gobble gobble.
He starts laughing at that about 5 minutes before it appears.
Right.
And you know when in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, chopping the cabbage. Yes, dear, it's Christmas, and we're all miserable.
That's so funny. So you guys make it, you have your Christmas movie thing. In our house, we make a big deal out of Hocus Pocus. Like that's we get our popcorn out. We got our whole Hocus Pocus thing. We got our sweatshirts that are like the faces, like the silhouettes of the Sanderson sisters. And that's what we all have on at Halloween. So my house is Hocus Pocus. Y'all are National Lampoons. My mom finally saw last year, I think for the first time, A Christmas Story. Like that, it runs 24 hours on Christmas every year for like 20 years. She finally saw it. Like she'd seen parts of it, and she said it's really interesting to see this whole movie put together from start to finish. Because she's like, it's on in the background, just one scene here and one scene there. She's like, oh, this is how it goes.
I've never seen that movie either.
Oh, it is good.
Like the only scene she knew was the kid with his tongue stuck to the flagpole.
Yep, that's the only scene I've seen. Yes, that's the only part I've seen.
Yeah, that's all she knew about that movie. It's like she thought the whole movie is about a kid with his tongue stuck to a flagpole. There's so much more to that. She goes, I don't know. But she finally saw it. That was good. Savannah, what about you?
Well, I'm in Phoenix, so it's
Also
never fall here. But there's actually a lot of really beautiful leaves if you go up north. So I definitely try my best to do that, but it's always hard to kind of gauge when they're going to change, because it seems like, and I don't remember this when I lived in Washington, but it seems like as soon as they change, the next day it snows, and so all the roads are closed. So you have a very small window of opportunity to go and see anything. But I love fall. It's just, it hasn't arrived here yet. I think today was maybe 104. So
oh my God,
we've got a ways to go.
That is just I can't do that. I mean, Louisiana is hot. And we used to say, I mean, in our family anyway, the saying was, we have two seasons, green and brown, because it's kind of the same way. It's green until everything turns brown. And then, it turns green again. Like there's no actual seasons there. It's just what color is our thing. The grass is green, the grass is brown, and that's it. But I do remember when it snowed when I was in middle school, and that was like the only snow we had ever seen. And we went outside like idiots in the snow, like it was some magical thing. And it's probably just a dusting. I don't know. We didn't even have clothes for it. We had nothing.
You don't get snow at all? No snow?
We do here in Tennessee. I'm in Tennessee now, but in Louisiana, I was in 8th grade before I saw snowfall from the sky. And I had never seen it before. I remember everything about that day. I was in PE. I was in my shorts and my gym shorts and my t-shirt. And we're watching it through the windows in the gym. And we're like, it was like Chicken Little. It was like the sky was falling. We're just like, what is happening? Like, we didn't know. And then somebody comes in the gym and goes, it's snowing. And you could not have stopped the stampede out that door, because all of us in our shorts and t-shirts, boom, out of the gym. And we're standing there like doofuses. Looking at it now, I'm like, we look like a bunch of fools standing out there. But we were so excited. And of course, it's South Louisiana. And so, they didn't know what to do about it either. They knew nobody was ever going back in the building again. So they closed schools down to get us all home. Seriously, it might have covered the road. I don't know. But they sent us all home. I had no clothes for this. It was, again, green and brown. There's no cold. And so I go home, and my mom puts me in a pair of my jeans. I did have jeans. My dad's sweatpants over this. I'm in 8th grade, y'all. I'm an 8th grade girl. Tammy and I were talking about 8th grade girls before this, because I'm an 8th grade teacher. I'm telling you right now, none of my students would have ever dressed the way that I dressed to go outside of my front yard that day. I had on jeans, I had on sweatpants, I had on these long socks. I don't know where they came from. I had these big long socks on and like layers of shirts and stuff. And I had no gloves. And so I had knee socks on my hands over my sweatshirt. And then my mom decided that wasn't good enough, because my hands were going to get wet and then they were going to get cold. She took plastic Ziploc bags from over our hands and ponytail holders to hold them on, so that we could go outside and make a snowman. Y'all, it took 3 or 4 yards, like house yards worth of snow to come up with enough to make a little snowman that we then let sit there in the yard and melt for a while. But I can't imagine any of my 8th grade girls going out dressed like that. plastic Ziploc bags, ponytail holder to their hands. That's Louisiana in the snow. And y'all, I lived there until I was 25 years old. I never saw snow again. That was it. That was my snow experience until I moved to Tennessee as an adult with a 2-year-old child. Like, and that was it. So, you know, this is why I like Halloween and I like fall. Like Halloween, you know, dead of winter in Louisiana is basically fall in Tennessee. Like that's what it is. So yeah, I mean, we eat all this hot and spicy food and I don't really know why. I mean, I have been colder in Louisiana than I think I've ever been in Tennessee because it's a wet cold. I think that's why we eat the spicy food, because it has to, like, wet cold is really hard to warm up from. But yeah, no, I'm not good with the cold, clearly inexperienced.
Nola, wouldn't it be funny if you went to go visit some place that had a lot of snow and you dressed exactly that
Yeah.
way? You put the knee socks on and somebody's that's like, you know, those movies. Like you just
Right.
go, like, well, isn't this what you do in the snow?
What I know to do in the snow. All I know to do is put on my dad's
That's right.
pants and shirts and like it was nuts.
That's funny.
I both wish and am glad that there were no pictures. I mean, I wish there were pictures. Really glad there's not.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
That would have been horrifying if there had been pictures of that. The only consolation that I have is that my middle school brother was also dressed exactly the same way. So that's the only consolation that we've got. Oh God. I don't know. I've had a lot of wine. I'm telling stories now. How we doing, Deborah? I'm almost down on this glass. How is your glass looking?
I'm about halfway.
We're slowing down a little bit. I know. Oh, Carol's done.
Mine's empty.
Lynn still got some. Oh,
See?
Patricia's
I'm gonna
empty
fill
too. Now
the-
this is my second glass.
I
So
should have filled the big one. Next time I'll fill the big one.
there you go. I want to see the big one full for sure. Well, trying to catch up with the rest of you ladies here. I'm going to wrap some things up here with you guys. First of all, those of you who are watching anxiously awaiting Crescent City Sin, and I know I've got a lot of you out there who've been asking about it, just know Crescent City Moon is where you need to start. So if you've not read Crescent City Moon yet, it is available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Target.com. Go get your copy of Crescent City Moon so that you are ready for Crescent City Sin, which is coming out next month, close to Halloween, it looks like. And Crescent City Sin does pick up right where Crescent City Moon left off. So you will definitely need to get your hands on Moon before Sin drops. And also, while you're there, at all of those retailers looking for your next great read, please pick up one of the books of these fabulous ladies who have had some wine and laughs and fun with me tonight and spent so much of their valuable time online with all of us. So please, 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 authors are not having the chance to get out and promote like we would love to do, to get out and meet our readers. So we do and just really value you guys spending your time with us. But also as readers, let's show our appreciation for the author spending so much time with us this evening. So kind of a mutual show of appreciation here, guys. These are the books that you need to go get your hands on, and definitely pass those around. Enjoy those with your families. There's some great stories there, guys. Make sure that you're reading those. And, every once in a while, hand one to the man in your life and see if he finds a little bit of himself in those as well. And also, if you are looking for either this episode, if you joined us late or had to leave early, or watching this on a repeat, or if you want to see past episodes of the Second Line Show, this is episode 6, so there are 5 others for you to catch up on. They're all housed on Nola Nash Entertainment channel on YouTube, and you can go check those out there. Ladies, it has been a fun day. I can't just say a fun show because you have started the fun so early on today. It has been an absolute joy. I feel like I've spent the day with you guys, and it has been so much fun getting to know you all, getting to laugh with you all today, and just really kind of hanging out and learning some stuff. This is a new genre for me, really, to kind of get into. I spend so much time in historical fiction because most of my books are historically based. So kind of branching out into, more modern stories of modern women is a great place to be. So much to learn from both you guys and your characters. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us and telling
for
those
having us.
stories that touch so many of us. So thank you for spending so much time with us. We truly enjoy it. I know the comments, guys, we got to laughing and telling stories and drinking wine, and I didn't get to as many of the comments, but know if you've left some comments in the chats that I'm going to be jumping back on all of the sites where these are and trying to touch base with some of these comments and interact with you guys. Continue to leave comments as you're watching the reviews, the replays as well, and we'll catch up with those there too. So thank you, all of you who are watching on all of the places that we've been broadcasting live and on the replays as well. Thank you, ladies. It has been one heck of a day with you guys. I could not have asked for a better day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to
Great.
meet everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.